Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to the Gundam Explained show live if you're here live. I keep forgetting I call this a live show, but sometimes it's not because you could be listening to this in the future. Why do I have to make time travel jokes all the time?
I mean, if you were listening to it in the past, that would be a little weird, right?
I would want to know how that happened. That would be interesting. I mean, it could happen. We have Santo Bell, one of our members here, longtime members that is in Australia, and so like in the Discord, he was like, "Hey, Merry Christmas from the future." Well, I added the time travel thing. I don't know. I love it, but
Oh,
no.
man.
Yeah. Speaking of Christmas, yeah, we had Christmas yesterday, so we talked about it. Steven, how are you doing? I know you streamed on Christmas Eve, and you were actually playing. This was a good idea. You were playing from SD Generation Genesis, the 0080 levels, right?
Man, it could well, because I don't have cross rays. Otherwise, I would have done, like, Endless Waltz, right? But,
Oh, good. I didn't think about that because I have Crossrays. I just never play it.
well, so I thought it was funny because it was like you, Ultronymous, and I all did gaming streams on Christmas Eve. We didn't wanna do
Yeah.
anything on Christmas, obviously let people spend time with their families, do their
Yeah.
thing, but, having an opportunity to do one last live show, before the end of the year, and, maybe we'll do some more streams, like, before then, but not like the
Yeah.
official live
Not the
show.
official. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
I
that
know.
was cool.
Yeah. I think if I remember correctly, so SDG Generation Genesis is a huge game. Like,
Massive.
because I have to look up the time. I wonder if I can do that live while we're because I have that Exophase website I always use.
Oh,
But
yeah.
like I played it so much, and then I remember what was it? Like I'm finally at Zade. Oh my gosh, 69 hours. Nice. But yeah, that's how long I've played it, and I'm at the Zeta part. Like
Wow.
I finally got to the or finally, I don't know. How long does that stuff take? There's so much one-year war stuff, you know?
There's a ton. Yeah, I mean, and see, I had the benefit of playing on the PS Vita, and so, like, it was like my wife would be asleep in bed, and I'm just kind of under the comforter, like
Dude, that's such a good reason to get a Vita because I feel like I'd probably play it more. Because sometimes I'll be in a situation where it's like, "Oh, let's see if I have a phone game to play," because and most phone games I can't get into because what the game ends up being is managing your currency, getting your
Yeah.
clicking the thing every day. In fact, there was this cool Godzilla game called Battle Line that I was like, "Oh, I'm into Godzilla now. I'll do the game thing." That's how my brain works, and it just does that. I log in, then it's like, "Okay, check my refreshes here, check my refreshes there," and then after a while, I'm like, "You know what? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm done with these."
I do this with my real world bank account, like, log
Yeah,
in, check my
exactly.
balance,
I
okay,
know. But you know what? Zionic Shadow said he played it all. That is quite the achievement,
Yeah,
which is awesome.
and it's a tough game to 100% because, well, there's a couple of, like, late stage mobile suits that you can pick up, and then you can just go back and just mop the floor with One-Year War stuff, like
Yeah, I got the DLC, Advanced of Zeta stuff,
oh, yeah.
and I've just been upgrading those, and I've been using so it's like nothing is canon. But I do like how some of the levels, or most of them actually, all have that, like, bonus scenario to do, like, if you can and I remember there's some where this is where, Rob with Flail-Throughs comes in, he has all this stuff documented in his YouTube videos where I'm like, "Okay, how do I do this in 2 moves?" And which reminds me, because I'm also playing that Godzilla Voxel Wars, and it actually plays just like that. And I've wrapped my head around it more, but you're
Yeah.
Godzilla and it's on a grid, whatever. But you want to, what you want in the maps, there are buildings infested with mushrooms. And as Godzilla, you want to attack them because that gives you G energy to then ask Kaiju to help you. So what the game mainly is using Godzilla to destroy these mushrooms to get energy to then use the Kaiju to destroy the Kaiju. And so
Interesting.
a lot of times it's the challenge is like beat this in 2 moves without any hits. And it's like,
Wow.
how? But it's that deep with the mechanics where it's like, oh, you can figure out how to do it. And then they even have it where people can make their own levels. So then I went in and downloaded someone's level to try, and it was so hard. But what's interesting is every time you make a move, there's a back button. I don't know if it's like that in G Generation where you can just I where you can just undo
Yeah,
you can
you
undo all the way back.
yeah, you can, like, if you're moving a single unit in G-Gen, you can, like, map it out and then decide to go back and I did that a few times, on Christmas Eve
Oh,
is,
cool.
like, especially when it came to using some of, like, the Midnight Fenrir units is, like, I would move them into position, see what the attack was, and then see, like, "Okay, what's my hit percentage?" Yeah, 62%, that's not
Yeah.
quite high enough for me, so then I would move them back, move another unit, and then, kind of
Well, it's what I mean is it's like an unlimited undo.
Oh,
'Cause I
so, like
could then do the action and attack, but then undo and go back. So it's interesting how the game is structured. It's almost like free form, do whatever you want, but how can you optimize your experience to get the challenge done? So
interesting.
it does make you spend more time.
But I kinda wish that there was, like, an RNG punishment for that. Like, did you ever watch that movie, About Time with, Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams?
If it's about time, I've had to see it. I think
If it's about time. So it's got Bill Nighy in it. Domhnall Gleeson
interesting.
is this, character. It's like a romantic comedy, but all of the men in his family have the ability to travel back in time, and,
Okay.
so he uses this ability to, like, manipulate things like, "Oh, I screwed up with my first line talking to the girl, so I'm gonna go back in time and redo it," and then, like, all this stuff. Well, there comes a point in the movie where it's after he has a two-year-old daughter, and he's, like, trying to fix something that happened, and he goes back in time, and when he comes back, he fixed what he did, but then he has a son instead of a daughter, and he asks his dad about it, like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's the thing about your time traveling ability is, like, your kids are, like, moments in time, and so, like, I if you go back
Wow.
before they're born, different kid gets born, and it's like, "Oh, man," like, that's a heavy
That's
choice to live with.
that's very interesting. The idea of it's a completely different person.
Yeah. So then and the only reason I bring up something so heavy is because then imagine that as a game mechanic where it's like,
Yeah.
yes, you can undo your actions, but things might not play out the same way that you expected them to.
I like that. So if I was to apply that to this Godzilla game, it's like I can do the unlimited undos, but then when I go forward, it could be that a different kaiju shows up, a different attack is used. Yeah, I like where you're going with that. But speaking about time travel movies, did you see that Nicolas Cage movie Next?
No, I've heard of that
Okay.
one, but I never saw it.
Not gonna say anything about it. You need to watch it. I think your wife would like it too. It's a great movie.
I
If that's the one
love
I'm
time
thinking.
travel.
I want to say he did a couple sort of time travel movies, or maybe I don't know. Nicolas Cage does everything, and
I mean,
it's
yeah,
usually pretty
he's
good.
Superman.
Yeah, Superman. He was going to be Superman. That's
Yeah,
right. He could still be, and he was actually in the Flash movie.
yeah. Again, time travel.
Yeah,
Sometimes things get mixed up and you end up with Nicolas Cage Superman.
which is pretty interesting because I guess since we last did a show, they came out with that Superman movie trailer, and we're movie buffs, especially like I love. Just thinking about the Gundam movie, like the idea that's what influenced me to make this channel. Like when it comes to filmmaking, I'm not a huge Superman fan. And also, I think James Gunn is a great filmmaker, but I'm not necessarily into his movies. That said, I do think this would be good. Like it would be what the mainstream would want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely feels like a Marvelized DC movie, right?
Yeah. And I think maybe in what he's talked about in interviews and the approach is because I've been looking at this is to not go too far with that, where
Yeah,
then the comedy is just that. And it's like, what are we, even doing? But he's good at that stuff with heart, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Like,
yeah,
it's funny, those Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I do not care for the characters. I do not care for the story, but it is fun how he directs the ensemble,
yeah,
and to me, that's what like the Suicide Squad movie he made. I didn't care for it at all, but it was fun watching the ensemble. Like that's what he's good at. Um,
yeah. And that can be tough. I mean, like, juggling that many sort of personalities and then also like their story arcs and things like that. You've got a lot of people in your ear telling you, well, that's not how I think this character should behave. And it's like, well, I'm the director, so
yeah, And that's funny because, I saw Kraven the Hunter, and
Oh
I
yeah,
forgot if I've
yeah.
talked about it, where it's like, it's not a bad movie. In fact, if this was like the first of the Sonyverse Spider-Man movies, the Sony villains, I think people would be more, warmed to it. But I think because of after like Madam Web and Morbius, which both of those I stopped halfway through, I think by falling asleep.
You didn't even make it to Morbin time?
No. Yeah, I barely remember that movie. I like the actress in that one though. But anyway,
Yeah.
but once they got to Craven, it's kind of like, well, this really isn't doing anything interesting. Venom was kind of marvelizing the whole thing, but
Yeah.
it, so
And
the
I think that
director.
Venom probably would have flopped if not for having Tom Hardy attached to it.
Exactly, and he had creative input,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So that kind of going back to that, and this is what I'm hoping out of the Gundam live action movie is the this Kraven the Hunter movie. They got a director who made films that he would write and direct his movies, and they all did very well, and they're all well made. Even if you didn't like a movie or not, you can sometimes notice, okay, that's well produced or whatever. This was the first movie that he directed that he didn't write. And so I think that says something
Interesting.
when a studio is hiring an auteur director that is used to writing, directing, you need them to do the writing, directing,
Yeah.
and I think that's where sometimes it felt like that's so I said this movie is well made, but there was nothing about it, no charm. And it's because the writer or the director wasn't able to put in what his fingerprint is to direct.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is the story. Okay. And it's funny because Russell Crowe is great in it. Like, and Aaron Taylor Johnson as the good guy. Like, that was interesting. It's just everything around it you didn't care about. Like,
Yeah, I mean, some of those characters, like, Venom has a little bit more gravitas to him, but like,
yeah,
Morbius and Craven, they're cool villains, but like without Spider-Man, there's not a whole lot there. I mean, it's
yeah.
like imagine if they made a Captain Cold movie, like just Captain Cold from the Flash Rogues Gallery, like no one
Well,
cares.
see, that's a good point because, like, with the Morbius movie, I think if they leaned into a vampire horror film,
Mm,
maybe that's what would have helped it. I mean, that helped like the early Captain America movies, right? I mean, something like Winter Soldier because they decided to lean into that type of genre.
yeah, yeah, and same thing with like Blade and the Punisher, right? Like those
Yes.
were much more like
Oh, Blade. Yeah.
grounded and small stakes, like very contained stories.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. So I hope, and it's been interesting because while I've been doing my Godzilla watch, of the right now, I'm really, and I do this thing where I rewatch movies a lot when I like them, and it's funny because I rewatch movies that I know maybe people don't like this or people don't care about this, but I like what it's like. Oh, the artist was trying this. I get it. Good job. And so one thing I've noticed with like watching these Godzilla movies is I'm then lately to get the family interested in watching some. They like the modern American, or not that they're not modern, but the American MonsterVerse, Legendary.
Yeah,
But it almost does the Marvel thing, but actually less offensively because it's doing over the top fantastical action. Where Marvel does that too, but then every second there has to be a quip that someone wouldn't say. Whereas in these Godzilla movies, they minimize that or they relegate it to a character.
yeah,
And
and I mean, I think that in Japanese culture, maybe how do I say this politically correct?
yeah,
Like
we will-
they're not a humorless people, but they definitely do are like everyone's not a comedian in Japan. Let me put it that way.
yeah, and so it's interesting then watching the two films because the two style of filmmaking because what happens with the American ones they make them so serious that sometimes the fantastical comes off as cringe
Mm,
in a way, almost reminding me of like when I was in middle school in theater class and I had this idea for this zombie movie. I'm
it's
talking,
gotta
but
be
it's like,
so cool.
yeah, but I'm acting so serious about it, but I'm forgetting the charm. Whereas these Japanese Godzilla movies, it's almost like they go charm first. Okay, what makes this this? And it's like, well, since we're using suitmation, the model, we have to film it this way, or now we have to fill in, how do we do interesting character stuff? So to go back to time travel, it's very interesting how this one 90, I forget, it was the 91 Godzilla movie where they had people, alien or humans, come from the future to help them, but then go back in time to kill the original Godzilla dinosaur before it morphed. And then they messed up present. So I think it was something like King Ghidorah was alive, or Godzilla, I forget. And then they had to go to the future to then make a mecha King Ghidorah to then. So that's all goofy nonsense, but they're never trying to explain the science beyond like, oh, why we have to do this. And but then what happens is you get this fantastical action. They're not trying to be serious, so it's not cringe, if that makes sense. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, when I'm watching these modern American, like, disaster movies do this too, where it's taken so seriously that it comes off cringy because, like, well, okay, that's not, no one's gonna. And I think that's Marvel tried to fix that by adding the humor, but I think that's not what you have to do. I think you just
No.
have to be aware of a character's reaction throughout, and it doesn't have to be comedy. It could be a story-based, plot-based reaction.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're bringing this up because, like, yeah, I think that taking yourself too seriously comes off as cringe, and then like taking yourself not seriously at all, that's how you end up with like Deadpool, where it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
then nothing matters. Like,
Yeah,
there's no stake to
exactly.
anything. And so, we talked about that movie Carry On, and there's a lot of
Mm,
moments in Carry On that I think, you end up having to suspend disbelief because you're like,
okay.
wait a second, you have this like group of terrorists that is capable of developing like a bomb that they're going to smuggle onto a plane, but their entire plan hinges on one TSA agent being their patsy. Like, they can't just smuggle the bomb on any other way. And it makes me think of, like, movies from the '90s and stuff. Is like, I started thinking about, because, it was Christmas, we were watching Home Alone
Oh, cool.
Christmas Vacation and stuff like that. Home Alone is one of those movies that if you pay attention, they answer all of the potential objections from the audience. Is like, "Oh, wait a second, like, how would the flight attendant have let, Kevin on the plane
Yeah,
go to New York if he had the wrong boarding pass? Like, that's so dumb." It's like, no, it's because he ran into the lady and they
and mixed
dropped
them
all the
up.
boarding
Oh,
pass.
no, she just let him go or something. Because
Right, so they were
yeah.
like, "Okay, put him on the plane, like, we'll sort it out afterwards because we can't hold up traffic." And so it's like, even with just, like, a 3-second scene, you can address the objections of the audience without having to go. You don't have to do full Christopher Nolan and say like, "Well, the rules to going to Inception is that there are 3
Oh,
levels of
yeah.
dreams, and when you go past the 3rd level, you get to limbo, and limbo is actually 10 years done." It's like, you don't have to do all of that. Just have, like, one little 3-second scene that says, like, I don't know what happens after 3. Like,
That's interesting because in Inception, there's times where the rules aren't broken or the rules aren't gamed. Like, there's opportunities where the characters could have done more and they didn't. But it's interesting you brought up Home Alone because that's Chris Columbus, the director, which
yeah,
I think did the original Gremlins, if I'm not mistaken,
I'm pretty sure he did.
or he wrote it or something. Because what was
He was
interesting
involved.
about the original Gremlins was it established rules that you could then question.
Mhm.
Like, okay, eating after midnight, the time zone thing. So then in Gremlins 2, they joke about that, and I think that's a very interest it's almost like when you're writing these stories that you're filming, you kinda have to be aware of the audience watching it. So I think that's the difference with kind of these modern American films, like, they've kinda lost that, and it could just be where they realized, "Oh, the audience doesn't care," but then maybe yes, to a point, depending on the genre or type of film, but then it gets to a point where people are nitpicking at the movie because they really aren't explaining. And I wonder if there's a word for that. Is there a word for movies that, and I know I say verisimilitude a lot,
Mm,
and that could be what it is, but it's where things are events occur, and this was big in the Acolyte for me. Events
yeah,
occur that, like, okay, there's 10 more possibilities that would have rather worked or they could have done instead of this. Why wouldn't they? It's like then you're thinking that instead of enjoying it.
exactly, and it goes back to that advice that, the writers of South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, It's like if the beats of your story don't go, this happened and therefore this happened, or this happened but this happened, then you're lost. Because if you say this happened and then this happens, then you don't have a story. You
That's
have a
right. I
sequence
remember
of
you telling me
events.
that.
And it's like
I gotta
you
remember that.
always have to have a connecting thread that holds them together. And you can just barely stretch that thread sometimes. It's like, wait a second, is that really how they would have reacted to this? And then it's like, oh, but you can snap it back if you have something else happen to kind of bring it back.
That's interesting because so in the 2000s Godzillas, the Millennium ones, 2 of them are sequels or in the same continuity. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
you
Some of
mentioned
them
that where
are.
it's like,
Yeah, some of them aren't. And what's interesting about this continuity is the first one has Mechagodzilla in it, and they get a scientist that knows how to splice DNA or whatever, and they're using Godzilla's DNA from his bones as part of the computer in the Mechagodzilla. So the second movie, that's the direct sequel, is oh, because of that, Mothra is coming to destroy the humans if they don't put Mechagod. It's not supposed. That's unnatural.
yeah,
So it's that but thing, but a sequel, which is a great idea to think a sequel can be a but. That's a weird sentence, but I think that
I mean, it makes sense. Is
yeah,
like, yeah, that's the way that storytelling should happen. Is that
like
actions have consequences.
the original Mobile Suit Gundam. We stopped the Principality of Zeon, but the remnants formed, and then division within the Federation got big-headed with all the money and weaponry, and the Titans formed. Yeah, if you can connect a butt, and I like butts, so that kind of worked. No, but I think if you
Only
can
big
connect.
ones.
But no, that's something cool to think about because when I'm writing my own little stories in my head, I'm always thinking, what are some things that you've taught me that I've learned to pick up from, and that's one thing to think about.
Yeah, and I
Using
mean, dude,
storyboard.
you are so much more well versed on this kind of stuff because I am trying to think for the life of me of like a, not a marquee director that could work with an ensemble cast like what you would get with Gundam, right? Like, because you're gonna need someone that can handle having a Bright, an Amuro, a Char, a Sayla, Kai, Hayato. Like you have this ensemble cast. Every
Mhm.
single one of these characters needs a little bit of screen time.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
know, m- well,
And you're
my
not gonna
thought,
get James Gunn because, like,
well, but yeah, I wouldn't like his sort of
no, I wouldn't like his take on it either, but
even though he has done darker movies, but it's usually more focused, you
yeah.
know. But I think in Steven Spielberg comes to mind, which I don't even think that's the best idea, but I just think like Saving Private Ryan, how well that did, how I cared about all of those characters,
Yeah.
like, and that is kind of a war thing because these people are caught up against life or death at every moment. And that's what's big about the original Gundam is the characters are faced with life and death situations at every moment, and there's different personalities. Kai's personality versus Sayla's personality, and so again, Jim Mickle, which I'm finally memorizing his name, after seeing what he's done, I feel like that would work. So I mean, really still waiting. I'm hoping once January starts, we're gonna have some news. I,
Yeah, I mean, there's
I, in,
probably
in
there's gotta be some big developments for 2025, right?
Right, and this my thought is the first bit of news is going to be confirming that it is because I don't think they've necessarily confirmed, unless they kinda have that it's just just the retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. I mean, they kind of hinted at it the way they
Yeah.
spoke about it, but to get confirmation of that and the title, is it gonna be called Mobile Suit Gundam? Is it gonna be called Gundam? Or are they gonna call it G Suit? And Gundam's not even gonna be spoken at all in the whole thing.
Well, I think I don't remember if we talked about this on the show or not, or if it was just something I mentioned on Discord, but, like, given how many times Bandai has had their marketing blown up by people tracking what has been trademarked, um,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, Silver Phantom. Ooh, what's that? Requiem for Vengeance. Ooh,
Yeah.
what's that? Uh, Generation Eternal. Oh, well, we know what that is." But, like, that's the whole reason that they called G-Quacks or G-Cucks is, like,
Yeah.
because you can't trademark that, like, you're not gonna find it in the trademark registry. So it's
Yeah.
like, if we don't see something that's trademarked by Bandai or Sunrise, then, like, you
It's
know,
probably Mobile
it's
Suit Gundam,
probably just gonna be Mobile Suit Gundam.
which would be great. Yeah, only because that would inevitably get us hopefully to the Zeta movie, which would be sick. Like, to
Yeah.
see a live action Wave Rider, I think is what I'm most excited
I
about.
mean, ideally, I would like to see these things done as trilogies, like a Star Wars or like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we could get someone like like Peter Jackson was incredibly bold in his youth to say, like, of course I can do all three Lord of the Rings books in one movie, no problem. Let me go to New Zealand. I'm gonna get some of my guys together, and it was like, "Oh, shoot, I only did a little bit of all 3. I guess you have to let me do all 3 movies," like
Oh, yeah, and that was New Line at the time,
Yeah,
right? That he was yeah, and that's you know, talking about Lord of the Rings, even though I've never really watched through all of them, I maybe one day, I don't know what it is. The things that I've loved that I've seen on the internet are when it's the battles.
yeah.
Because to be honest, and I think it's hard for this to be animated. We see hints of it with the Battle of Abaku or something, but I do want to see lines, rows of grunt um uh, Xeon Federation just coming at each other. And then like the camera slowly moving as some are, or melee stuff, or some are shooting like
Oh, yeah.
the that oh, keep forgetting what's called Legend of Galactic Heroes, whatever that anime is. When they did the
Yeah,
remake, the way they showed all of the ships and fleet battles going on, it was like this is sick. And it's like,
because that's what it's supposed to look like.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so that goes back to the Saving Private Ryan, and that's where like the shaky cam on the beach, that's where that came from. Because how can we make this look like it's really happening? And that's yeah, at the end of the day, it's what I want them to pull off with um the gun. Now I wonder, I've got an idea here. In like the Mandalorian series, uh, they even for fun, I guess, created models of the ships, and they would do the old school, like the camera moving to the model and then green screening that. Do you think that could be done with a mobile suit? Like they create a model. I almost feel like that needs to be an Easter egg where at least some scenes there's a model kit that they have weathered just right, and they're doing some of that sort of physical,
I mean,
uh
I think that they would have to. Like, I maybe, I guess it depends on whether the mobile suit's in motion or whatnot, but, like, even in, like, old Star Wars and, like, the movies, it was like they would have the model and then green screen the actors in front of it. Like, they weren't standing in front of the Millennium Falcon. It was, a model this big
yeah.
that
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
like, for the scenes where it's like Amuro talking to Bright or something, green screen the actors and then have the model of the mobile suit, like, green screened in behind them, like
Like whole miniatures. It would be
Yeah.
cool if they were to combine that. There's something, and again, watching these 90s and 2000s Godzilla movies recently, it's like that's the part I love so much. Whenever I'm starting to see the miniatures or the smoke effects, it's like, man, how are they pulling this off? Wow, that looks great.
And they did that for Lord of the Rings, like, the whole city of Minas Tirith, like, that was,
Yeah,
like,
I
a
read
6 foot
about
tall
that.
model, and
Yeah.
they, like, superimposed it onto the landscape, and it's like, "Oh, hey, we're looking over this hill at this city in the distance." Um,
Yeah, that is yeah, it's interesting, even yeah, wasn't it episode 1 was m mainly miniatures when
mhm.
people were like, "Oh, the special effects are horrible." It's like, well, actually, most of the time yeah, so I don't think that stuff has really gone away as much as we think, and I think a lot of times you get, like, those studio big budget movies like a Craven or whatever, where they're just kinda just using CGI wherever instead of, I will say, to end with this movie thing real quick with Craven, showing off his superpowers was well done. Like I always look at what is the gimmick that this movie could have. Okay,
Yeah,
his superpowers are kind of unique, it's still super soldier, but I think they did like they pulled off a super soldier running looking like it. Not like the legs are moving, but they're fat, it's faster than the leg. Like they were really able to make him look like he was taking these giant fast like
strides, yeah.
even when he would get hit by something or run into something, it was done very well to make it look like and I would like to see that expanded, on in the future. But all right. Yeah, moving on from that. Here's a question. I know we're both dads, and so times have changed. Did you get anything cool for Christmas?
Yeah, well, I got a few things cool. I mean, my wife every year gives me a pair of socks with my daughter's face on them.
Oh,
So this
that's
year was
actually
funny
cool.
because it was, her Halloween costume, so she had, like, little cat ears on and stuff. But this is
Oh,
the
that's
last pair of socks that I get where it's only 1 kid on them, because next year I'm gonna have 2.
oh,
So
yeah. The leveling up the gifts. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
but then
cool.
I did get this pretty sweet thing from a buddy of mine.
Oh,
So
yes.
this was actually from you. This is my new Gundam build mat, which I hope can you guys still hear me when I'm talking through the neoprene?
Mm,
This thing is
barely.
awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this yes. So guys, this thing it's technically for sale yet. I just haven't promoted it yet because my sample was messed up. His sample is working fine. And the idea is it's a mat for building, but not for cutting or painting. I mean, yeah, you can if you want, but the purpose is just when you're at your desk and
yeah,
maybe you're multitasking and then you want to like
and it's got
cut.
designated areas for each of
Yeah.
the parts as you're building them.
The part that I needed the most was the right and left for building like arms and legs. So I can cut the parts, put them in their areas, and then not be like, okay, where was that part? I knew it was here somewhere. And that's why I made it the color it was, where it's not white, but it's
Yeah,
not dark.
so that
Um,
you don't lose the parts on there. I
yeah.
appreciate that.
So it's for sale right now. I will later be doing a video, but it's just, yeah, the sample they sent me was messed up, but yours turned out fine. So
Yeah, mine was great. So between
that's cool.
that and then shout out to Ultronymous in the chat for hooking me up with this.
Oh,
The,
that is cool.
Hyrule Historia, which I had been eyeing for a very long time, so thank you, sir. I have a lot of Zelda research to do now.
Wow, that is cool. I love that stuff. Zelda lore or Zelda information. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there new stuff from Tears of the Kingdom? Was that
Not
lore heavy?
in this book. I think that this book goes up through Breath of the Wild, but not Tears of the Kingdom.
But does Tears of the Kingdom offer new lore?
It does actually. In a lot of ways, it kind of goes back and debunks a lot of the stuff from Breath of the Wild because there was a lot of
Oh,
speculation about what the Zonai were. Like, were they this barbarian tribe? And so they kind of retconned that for Tears of the Kingdom, obviously, because the Zonai became this like ancient civilization that was like the dawn of
ah,
Hyrule. So
I like that story. That's why I need to really play through Tears of the Kingdom. I just, the building
yeah, time
everything.
travel, like,
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the time travel stuff. Oh, yeah. Um,
but yeah. What
okay.
about you? What
Some
Christmas
cool
goodies
stuff,
did you get?
actually. So, first of all, my wife gave it to me early. It was a Godzilla shirt of him in a Santa outfit because she was
Awesome.
like, "I'm gonna give this to you now so you can wear it on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day." So that was cool. But then also, and hey, here's the thing. Yeah, everyone knows I have a Gundam channel, whatever. But it's like what to get Adam Gundam wise because he has everything, like as I'm always getting the thing. So she got me this little uh Funko Pop of Godzilla, which is interesting because it's the first time I feel like a Funko Pop actually looks good. You
It does. It
Yeah.
works for Godzilla,
It does.
especially because he stands upright like that. Like, I
Yeah.
like the upright,
Yeah.
Godzilla as
Me
opposed to,
too.
like, the more hunching over dinosaur ones that
Right. And the eyes too, like the big black eyes, it just works with this sort of design rather than like a human. That's why I don't really I mean, even, I have that Jumbo RX-78-2 Funko Pop, which that's pretty cool, but even the big circular black eyes, it's like that doesn't really make sense to me,
yeah,
you know.
everything looks like Coraline.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but, and then, my brother gave me a shirt, and I posted it in the Discord. It was like that skull RX-78-2, head, and it had, like, Gundam and, like, black metal.
So metal.
Yeah, it was really cool, yeah, and that's really about it. Oh, I think my mom got me some penguin shorts, shorts with penguins on them for, pajama shorts, so,
No, of
um
course.
now, I did get myself something. It was a pre-order though, but this is that Zeta GM2 that I love the look at this. Just like the grunt suit, like the mass production, the frontline type of unit. Like I love this stuff. And I haven't done a review of it yet, and I will, but this is actually featured in my top 5 robot spirits of 2024, even though I just got it. But It's just because it's everything I want in a Gundam action figure because it's the
Yeah.
GM. It's the GM from Zeta.
And it's like the pinnacle
Yeah,
you and I have talked about this before, how like the Gundam Mark II is it's like the leveled up Gundam. Like it's the
yeah.
perfect version of the Gundam. The GM2 from Zeta is like the less goofy, like we're gonna be serious about designing mobile suits version of the
Yeah,
GM.
because the antenna is what also helps. And
Yep.
even, how they make the helmet head part a little more realistic, even though again it has the primary colors. But and what's really cool is it's hard to see on here, but I'll talk about it in the review. Like all the tubing in the back has all
Yeah.
this texture on it, and it's just and something that's really cool, especially just thinking of design wise, this being in space more is what I'm assuming are extra uh, thrusters that are around the
Oh, sweet.
legs.
Yeah, for
Just
like added maneuverability.
yeah, because I would wanna see that, like, seeing just a blank leg, it's like, well, there's more that could be used for mechanically, like, in space, how it
Yeah.
would function. Because yeah, you might have the thrusters on the bottom of the feet, but you would think you would want them in other places, so
And it's got a beam rifle, like, instead of the little beam spray gun,
oh,
like,
yeah,
I
exactly.
always go
Yeah.
it's like Men in Black, the whole noisy cricket thing, like
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, no, so, like, yeah, this is great. I can't wait to do the full review for it, but, the video is up, though, if anyone's interested, the top 5 robot spirits of 2024. I had so much fun. I love doing videos like that because I have like the camera in 2 places, and it's like I like that I can talk about the figure. I can't wait to do it. I think I'm going to do it for Gunpla because there are some cool Gunpla that I'm proud. It's more of like I'm proud of how I customized it. So I'd be like, oh, here's my favorite ones from 2024. But
nice.
I wonder, you know what? I feel like with Gunpla, when you could say top Gunpla of 2024, I feel like it's valid to have maybe a top that you built in 2024 that might not have came out in 2024 because how many people really do build the kits that come out right then? A lot of times you're seeing people that are already working on something else comes out, and that's part of their backlog. I
Yeah.
know I've done that.
Well, and I mean, if you look at any of the top builders, like, the people that win Gunpla Builders World Cups, it's like they're
Oh,
building vintage kits. They're building
yeah.
stuff from their backlog. Nobody is building something from that year ever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
That
I feel like the only people that build the stuff that's coming out this year are like Ray
content
Studio and
creators.
Mecha Guy Kotsu.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's like the content creators or people that are more maybe, newer to the hobby, and they're just getting the one building because I feel like and it happened to me, when you first get into the hobby, you're just building them all the time. And then it gets to that point where you realize, "Oh, I can't build this one yet. I'm still finishing this." But then you happen to get another one, and then you're like, "Well, I might as well get a whole bunch," and then you have a backlog.
Yep.
And then
It
you gotta
starts
choose.
small and then
Yeah,
all at once.
so another one and so I did a live stream of this. So this is that Mobile Suit Ensemble Strike Freedom, uh, or yeah, Mighty Strike, whatever. I actually went through and painted and detailed it. So even like it might be hard to see on here, like the gray on the shoulders, there's gray on the actually a lot of gray on the chest unit itself.
Nice.
I went through and painted, and it was so much fun just to hand paint. Like, so not only is the live stream available if you wanted to see in detail how I did everything, but like even the guns, these things were completely white. And I went through and added, the
Wow.
red, the blue. That was so fun. I am gonna have a full review of this Mobile Suit Ensemble one just to kind of show all of its little gimmicks because it came with option parts set because it's the Freedom, but then it has the thing for the Mighty Strike Freedom, which I keep forgetting the name of that. I know someone will probably throw it in chat, but um, in that video, I will kind of detail like this is what you should do. Oh yeah, the other thing too is the beam sabers come clear, so I happen to have a Gundam marker that was neon pink.
Oh, sweet.
So that kind of worked out, because it has a great color to it, and now it's not, like, see-through or clear, but,
But
I
it's
mean,
like reflective, like
yeah,
yeah.
it still works really good. I was really proud of that, and speaking of clear, I finished this, and I will be doing a full review of it, but I'm actually waiting to get this third-party Oh, I forget what it's called. The light,
Oh
Wings
yeah,
of Light, or
yeah.
something like that. So there's this third party Wings of Light kit I want to get for this, and then I'll do a review. But I will say
And
one
that's just the
thing is
effects parts, right? Like that's not an LED kit.
no, but that is a great idea because it was cheap. It's like $10 where it's just the wing, but the LED thing. You sent me some stuff, so I might have to see how I can utilize that.
There you go.
But but one interesting thing about a clear kit, and I don't know if anyone else has built Proud Defender. Thank you guys. That's the
Very
name
good,
of the
very good.
add-on. But the one interesting thing about these clear kits is I put on all the decals. It was tons. But most of the time, oh, it almost fell. Most of the time, it
Can't see
doesn't
'em.
even, yeah, you can't even really see the decals. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. I need to revisit the idea because again, I only built this because I saw it in person and thought it looked great. But I don't remember if I saw the decals or not. And I don't know if it's worth putting the decals on or not. So I might have to revisit that. Um, I'll talk about it in the review, kind of like live and or in real time as I'm looking at it. And I would like to get other people's thoughts on that too, because after building that clear kit, I kind of like that, but it depends what it is.
I think like for yeah, I mean, if there are white parts of the kit, maybe they shouldn't be just clear. Maybe there should be some like just a little tint of color to them, like whether it's a gray or something. You know what I mean? Like
Or they should have a different decal sheet that maybe is reflective stickers instead of just the
there you
standard
go,
ones. And
even better.
because I think that's the issue. It's because even the instruction manual for it was of
It's the
the original
same
release.
manual, yeah.
So I do think it would need reflective stickers or something, but still, that was a lot of fun to build. I really enjoyed that. But anyway, I guess I was just bringing up stuff I got for myself. What else did I get myself? That's the problem. I'm usually getting myself things.
But see, and you brought up a very good point, which is like, being a Gundam content creator, like your wife knew not to get you anything Gundam related. She got you Godzilla things because she knows that that's the kick you're on.
Yeah.
Ultronimus knew not to get me more Gunpla, but instead to get me something Zelda related because it's
Yeah. That's a good
something
idea.
that I'm also interested in that I'd talk nonstop about. So I think that yeah, for the Gundam creator in your lives, don't get them any more Gundam.
Yeah,
Get them something.
exactly. That's actually pretty good. Okay, I want to talk about something else with Christmas, and that is sometimes the blues that set in.
Mm.
You know, and does that happen to you at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, especially
Okay.
after any like major holiday where there's lots of people gathered and we all are like having a good time and stuff like that. It's like as soon as the party's over, as soon as everybody leaves, I'm like, I get this like I don't know if it's like a serotonin hangover or something like that, but like
Okay, that's a
I get
good way to put it because I wonder if
blues, man.
it's so yeah, I'll explain too. Like, and I even posted in the mental health section on the Discord just because I thought, okay, it might happen to me because it happened to me last year stronger than I thought. And it's what I'm thinking it's related to is when I was younger, I was very fortunate where Christmas was awesome every year. My parents, they didn't spoil us, but we got the things we wanted. And I remember having so much fun. And I remember where that whole week until school, at the end of the day, I'd put the toys I got back under the tree for the next day to then use or play with or to be video. It was like I'm surrounding myself. It's like when I get into something like Godzilla, where I'm listening to the music, I'm watching the movies, I have the toys near me. It's like that with Christmas time. I think Christmas is that sort of thing. That's so funny and a little tangent. Like, when sometimes, someone, wink, wink, my wife gets on you like, oh, when you get into something, you really get into it. I'm like, but is that any different than Christmas? It's the same sort of thing. It's you're able to create this little pocket experience for yourself where
Right.
you're indulging
Immerse
in
yourself.
yeah, immersing yourself into the thing, and that's what brings the joy. So, like, earlier this year, and this helps me because I'm really into Gundam. So when I have these offshoot things, it kind of helps balance that. Like when the X-Men 97 came out, I was like, oh, back into that as a kid. All that music's awesome. They're coming out with new figures that are awesome, all that stuff. And then when I watched
Castlevania.
oh, yes, that is a really good example. The music, the video games. I was trying to write a movie, like, where all my ideas and expressions coming from. And then when I saw the Flash movie that had the Michael Keaton Batman, I'm just like, oh man, that was so cool. Oh, I remember Batman when I was younger. Music, Tim Burton. I made a costume for Halloween. Like I am
True.
immerse myself. And so and I think Christmas is that too. The difference is growing up, it was, I had myself, I had a older half brother, but he wasn't always there on Christmas. But then I had my sister, my other brother, my other sister. The house would be full. Another interesting thing was my parents would have friends over a lot.
Yeah.
Or we would go to someone's house. So always around that time, like you were saying, surrounded by a bunch of people, I made it a week of playing with my toys under the tree. There was always something to do. And it's interesting as I've gotten older, even to the point where my kids are a little older, where while they're excited about Christmas, it's not that big of a deal. It's not wake up super early, get to the tree. They can just stay in until they decide to get up. And so and the other part too is I'm not going to be getting a bunch of presents, but not that I need to get a bunch of presents, because what would everyone get? You know what I mean? And so it's different when you're a kid. There's so many things you want and you can't just get them. So that's the way you get them. But when you're older, you don't need that. So then I feel like it's like you're saying there's that hangover, but how much of it is a withdrawal that for so many years, every year there's this week where, and I think getting into spiritual stuff, it could be a lot of people. Maybe there's this sort of consciousness, this greater consciousness, because people are in this mindset and maybe you feel it. Like today, my wife and I were like, well, let's go to the mall. And I really wanted to, because I wanted to be surrounded by people. And
Mhm.
everyone's still in that Christmas spirit. The mall was playing Christmas music, or some of the stores are in. And so I'm feeling that. But then I'll sit at home when nothing's going on. And it's like, well,
What do I do now?
yeah, and then I feel that feeling that's missing of when I'm feeling like I'm connected, when I'm feeling like I'm focused. And so I think that's what it is. And so it could be that it's a real thing and a fake thing at the same time. It might just be, well, it's a real feeling, but this is an opportunity to then create the newer experiences that then can be a new tradition. Like my brother came over and I was like, okay, we need to play a game. And it was this Golf with Friends. I don't know if you've ever played that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, super fun game.
And
And so we're
that's a
just,
great party game, like
yeah, yeah. But back in the day, I remember, uh, what games. Okay, he was younger at a certain point, but once he got old enough, I remember, yeah, even though I lived on my own, I would go to my parents' house and sleep over, bring my Xbox. And I remember we would just play Assassin's Creed. I'd just play next to him, but on my Xbox, and then he'd be on his, and we just play. And then the Call of Duties and all that. But I think in I'm really going off on tangents, because I wonder how much gaming has kind of turned into it's either all in on multiplayer or you're a solo player. I
But
think
see,
it's
that's the thing is, like, I think online multiplayer is a trap. I think it's a
yeah,
trap that breeds isolation and loneliness, and, obviously, like, I'll be honest, like, hey, like, I'm a Christian, and there's stuff from a spiritual standpoint that I can talk about, like, sort of the emptiness, the empty feeling around Christmas, but I won't get into that, so much as, like, yeah, couch co-op is a thing that I think is missing in modern, family gatherings. Like it was like I had my older brother, my younger brother, my older sister is kind of older than the three of us, so she never really like played with us. But like, we had, man, so three, four, five cousins that we would all go see
ah,
in Arkansas, and so we would all get together. We'd have the Xbox going. We'd play Halo 4 player, and it would be like, okay, when someone dies, they're knocked out and someone else picks up the controller kind of thing. So there was always something like that going on. And but you don't get that playing Call of Duty or Fortnite.
right.
You just
Yeah.
don't.
And I think that's kind of what's missing with games. And this is like another topic I wanted to talk to you about later. I'll kind of bring it up, but then we'll talk about it later. And it's the idea that nowadays games just aren't as great as they used to be, because games right now are being developed based on what has existed. A lot of games
Yeah.
that we grew up on and played are based on, we don't know what this medium is yet. Let's just make up mechanics. But now everything is based off of mechanics, so it's hard to get that fresh take, even for people that aren't gamers, but they're older and they're like, well, it's
Dude, that's the same thing that I say about, like, mecha design, is, like, the
oh, that's a good thing.
what made mecha design in the early '80s so awesome is that this was, like, the first generation of, like, "Oh, what would a military use a humanoid robot for?" And, like, so that's where the designs came from. But from the '90s onward, you have mecha designers that studied other mecha, and so their designs all either end up as super derivative or completely out there where it's like, "Okay, I get it, like, it's super hyper realistic with all of the panels and, like, you've got all these exposed cables and stuff like that," but it's just it lost all of the cool factor, it lost the soul.
Right. Of it being this is a mech, like designing it for, it's just like when we were talking about the movies, when you are showcasing something special effects in the movie, it's making that experience be like, whoa, that so
And I think, limitations breed creativity.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
when everything is possible, then nothing seems interesting, but when certain things are impossible, that's when you can get, like, really creative. And it goes back to what I was saying with, like, the couch co-op is, like, if you had more than 4 people, then how do you play a party game with more than 4 people? Like, so you would come up with your own house rules and stuff like that, and that's where the
Oh
fun came
yeah.
from. Um, but if everyone can play, then it kind of
You know what? That brings up a good point because there's that new Power Rangers Rita's Rewind that just came out, and that has 5-player multiplayer.
which is
What's
cool.
interesting though is the game is made purposely to be hard.
Yeah.
So like someone like me might like that, but then if I'm trying to find a party game for just other people to play, then people would just be focusing on the mechanics and not like, oh, just having a good time. And that's why I think that golf game works. Um,
Mhm.
I think something like if you remember Power Stone on Dreamcast, like, and I know there's that new game Gigabash that kind of plays like that. Did you happen to play any games over the break, Christmas?
No, no, you know what I think I should have done was, what my wife and I had been playing, Keep Talking and, wait, what is it? Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes or something like that?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Which is a great party game. Like, I think that that would be a fun thing to do with family and friends is, like, one group of people plays, like, the bomb squad, like, the person actually defusing the bomb, and then the other one is, you've got the people that have the instruction manual, and honestly, that would be a cool thing for you and I to do since we can't see each other's screen.
Yeah.
If we streamed that, where it's like,
We
you're
okay.
the bomb disposer and I'm your, on the radio.
With me later, and we can make it Gundam themed. That would,
Yeah, we need a Gundam mod for Keep Talking and
yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah, well, so yeah, I think next year I'm gonna try to do the same thing and be really deliberate with having the games ready and different games to play, and then even inviting people that I normally, wouldn't invite, and just be like, hey, let's try to make a thing of it.
I mean, there's
Um,
definitely pressure and no one tells you when it's gonna happen, right? When it becomes
yeah,
your responsibility to then make the holidays special.
yeah,
Like, as a
that's right.
kid, your parents do it for you, but there
Yes,
comes a day that they don't do it anymore, and it becomes your responsibility, and you just never know when that day is gonna come.
it's funny you say that because there was my mom used to make this certain breakfast only on Christmas. It was like this pastry that was really good.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my brother happened to make it for himself because he was thinking about it, and I was like, "No, that's what I need to do too." Is and my mom would make cookies too every Christmas. So it's like there's so many things that I could just not. Yeah, I can't depend on my parents now that I'm the parent, and then I could do it. Yeah, it's something I definitely need to do. And another thing I did was I went and saw the Nutcracker at the theater, the movie theater. They had the ballet on. Now,
Yeah.
my wife and youngest, uh, it's weird how it worked out. We ended up taking 2 cars to go there, and they both wanted to leave. It's just I guess I grew up, watching that. So, like, and then the music to me, it's like sitting down and listening to an album because I know all the songs and it's really cool. But that's another Christmas tradition I wanna keep up is
Yeah. Yeah,
Nutcracker.
definitely.
Um, okay, I'm going to move on to this last thing that I think is pretty interesting, but I want to get everyone else's take on it. And there's this article that came out on
Well,
thegamer.com.
see,
You know it's
I was
fake.
reading that and I was like, "What's Thegomer?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is written by Ben Sledge, that's a badass name.
Yeah.
It's called "Why Is Everyone Obsessed with Gundam Now?" And I'm like, okay, well, where's this guy coming from? So I'll read this. My online existence practically lives in two circles, football and Warhammer, and never the twain shall meet, except in Blood Bowl. But that's a different kind of football. I follow people who paint nice miniatures, hand sculpt the most messed up beasties you've ever seen. Sculpt the most messed up beasties you've ever seen. And people who post things like Salah should have buried that, 9 points clear, and football without Origi is nothing. And I don't know what that is, but that's kind of an example of that world that he's in.
So European football, because that's
Oh,
soccer.
is that what that is specifically? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
glad
that's Mo
you were
Salah, and yeah,
okay, I'm glad
um,
you were here to say that, but,
he must be a Liverpool fan then.
oh, okay. But recently, one of those circles has expanded, or another circle has joined, or the circle has morphed into an oval or egg-shaped or something, because everyone in my carefully curated Warhammer feed is talking about Gundam. What the mech is going on? Which I like that sentence.
That's fun.
As far as I can tell, the surge in Gundam obsession has been spearheaded by Luis Sugden, the ex-Games Workshop staff member who left to create Rogue Hobbies, which I've heard of Rogue Hobbies. I'm just not familiar. An
Ah,
excellent YouTube channel with its own range of Goblin miniatures. Check out her channel, Buy a Goblin. Have a happy time. It's been interesting to watch ex-employees' growth after they've left the behemoth that is Warhammer, because so many of them branch out to try different systems. Chris Peachy Peach, who I interviewed earlier this year, enjoys Star Wars Shatterpoint, historical games from companies like Warlord, and has found a brilliant niche in Silver Bayonet, a fantasy Napoleonic game system where he substitutes in Sean Bean for some fantastical sharp adventures. Okay.
hmm,
Sujin has a similar approach. While both clearly hold Warhammer and its miniature ranges dear to their heart, she explores the weirder side of the workshop. However, she also isn't afraid to go further in her field for the cutest fantasy goblins, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm trying to get to the Gundam stuff. Okay, enter Gundam. Sujin, I've probably been saying it differently every time, has been singing the praises of Gundam for a few weeks now, and I think she alone has caused a spike in popularity for the models. She and select other influencers were invited to try the kits by Bandai, which seems to be engaging a focused marketing push in the UK at the moment. The marketing push is working. So Bandai UK recognized a situation where they can get in. And so, yeah, let me
I
go.
was gonna say, was this guy living under a rock that, like, you know, I don't know, maybe, and this would be a question for Kyle because, like, obviously, Simply New Type, we have these kind of discussions all the time about like, there's no such thing as being like a nerd anymore, where you're involved in every nerd community. Like,
Right.
yes, Louise might be new to Gundam, but like that doesn't mean everyone's new to Gundam. It would be like me saying like, what's this Minecraft thing everyone's excited about now? And it's like,
And
no,
that's what,
yeah,
yeah, no, that's what's interesting about reading this, because at one point it goes, "What is Gundam?" And it's like, well, I don't need to care. So it's really, this is written by a guy who's just now learning about Gundam
yeah,
through people that have the similar interests that are also now learning about Gundam. That says a lot about the brand still, where like I believe, and I know you do too, where I think there could be a bigger push for the Western audiences to embrace Gundam. So,
yeah.
and I forgot how it might have been Art Rovo or maybe someone else. I remember saying like, "Oh, this is a big YouTuber that's now doing Gundam," and um and I'm like, well, now doing Gundam, yeah, like what, but then I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, what if there is this unique spark about Gundam that people discover that are already into that, Venn diagram of hobbies. You get the painting miniatures, and then that aspect is here as well.
And credit to Bandai UK too, because what they saw was it would have been easy to find a Gundam YouTuber in the UK and invest in them. But what they were trying to do is expand Gundam, right? So instead of doing
Yeah,
that, they went to a Warhammer YouTuber that has a much bigger following and said, "Hey, can you try this Gundam out?" Like, you,
yeah.
and sometimes those things work, sometimes they don't, but like that is going to be the method to get these things out there, is not to necessarily, you know, like Adam and Steven are going to keep talking about Gundam, without any help.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I think that kind of reminds me of the F1 thing.
Yeah.
Like, sure, for people that like formula racing or whatever, the F1 racing, oh, there's Gundam, that's there. But what is that actually doing? What's the ROI on that? With reaching out to someone that was an ex-employee at Games Workshop and they're into Warhammer, it's like, well, here's an adjacent hobby where you can maybe expand, because I'm guessing, and I don't know too much of her channel. I just heard about it before. Maybe she's into painting. That's the aspect of the hobby I like too when I'm doing the little details. So that's like, oh, I can expand. Oh, this is now mechs instead of, whatever in Warhammer. I mean, there's some crossover with the mechanic stuff because there's a lot of that body horror going on. But yeah, I think, I think it's a good thing because I do think Bandai could learn from Warhammer, especially the video games. So maybe this is that step, but it's interesting. This is Bandai UK
Mhm.
that decided to do that. So
Yeah, interesting choice.
yeah, no, and that's really about it for the show. But I'm going to. Am I allowed to put links in the chat
Yeah,
as the owner? Do I have to ask you permission? No, I'm joking. Okay, yeah, I think you can
give
go
me
in
the
there.
wrench.
No, no, maybe I'll try to add it in the description because I think it's a neat thought experiment. How get newer people into Gundam. This is maybe the start of something new. So
Yeah. And what's interesting about it is this a way to gauge distribution, right? Because I think that a lot of our UK friends, Pyro, for instance, talks about how difficult it is to get certain model kits over there, and so that's
yeah,
that's the other thing is it's like, yeah, you could probably find somebody in South America that would happily promote Gundam to their South American following, but then it's like, well, how are they going to get the model kits, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. Like if it makes it big enough where then they're noticing people are trying to buy, it's like somehow try to come up with a system where maybe it's a limited time. Here is a site where you can buy for your region. So shipping, is subsidized through the cost of the kits, which can help. That's interesting stuff. But okay then, that's it for today's show. It's the last one of 2024. Steven, anything to add that brought up?
I don't think so, man. Happy
Cool.
New Year.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when we have our next shows, actually, is your show on New Year's?
Let's do a New Year's Eve stream. Like, man,
Or is it New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, your
oh
show?
wait, would it be New Year's Day? Or should we do it New Year's Eve? Let us know.
Yeah, yeah, because I could do New Year's Day for sure. New
Yeah,
Year's
same here.
Eve. Well, yeah, because we're not like we're gonna do it at midnight, or do we?
I think
I
that
don't
would
know.
be cool.
That could be cool. My wife might be like, "Okay, where's the kiss?" Okay, it's no, but no, that's fun. Okay, well, guys, all thanks for watching. Let us know what you guys think, because that would be actually pretty interesting. And then yeah, I'm gonna head out. So everyone have a good rest of the year. We'll talk later.